Hey there! Thanks for joining us again today at Tim Talks Cooking. Today we're canning sauerkraut. I did a video about 7 weeks ago where I showed you how to make your own sauerkraut, and now it's been fermenting for long enough to where it's ready, and I'm really thinking I need to use it in a recipe. I'm kind of craving a little sauerkraut here. So today we're going to can it, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's kind of an unusual process, but you know what? Enough with the jibber jabber. Rock on, my buddy Sahil. Let's get started. We'll be canning our sauerkraut today in a big old water bath canner. I'm sure you've seen these in all kinds of stores. They have them everywhere. And you just want to make sure, like here on the inside, this actually comes usually with a basket, a little wire basket you put the jars in to lift them in and out easily with. Mine rusted, and so I threw it out. I don't want to use rusted equipment in my kitchen. So I'm going to use another plate. This is from my other canner, my pressure canner. I'm just going to set that down in the bottom. You need to have the water circulate a little bit underneath the jars as they are in the canner because they might crack otherwise. Now, we're going to fill this up later with jars and with water. Let me just show you how to deal with the jars. Now, here's a jar that I haven't opened for 7 weeks, and there's probably a little pressure built up in there. Not necessarily, I don't know, it might hiss a little bit when I open it. But all I'm going to do here is open it up. I want to make sure I get the bubbles out of it, so I'm just going to push it down with my fingers here. The liquid level here looks okay to me. I could probably add maybe a tablespoon of some brine. You know what, I think I'll do that quickly. And then, as every time we can, we want to just wipe the rim with a clean cloth to make sure there's no food debris or anything there that's going to keep it from sealing. And then we've got the lid here. I'm going to give that a quick rinse in the sink. And we're going to put it right on there. Get it on there. Not too tight, but just tight enough. This method for canning sauerkraut is a little bit different than canning other vegetables in a water bath canner. When we do that, normally we heat the water up to boiling before we put the jars in and bring it back to a boil and then start the timing. Here what we're going to do is we're going to fill the canner up with our jars before we fill it up with water. I'm going to turn on the cold water here. We're going to fill this up with cold water. We're going to heat these up slowly on the stove. And start the timing when it comes to a slow boil, kind of a rolling boil. And then we're going to let them go for 30 minutes. Now here, I'm going to fill up the canner to the point where the water comes to about 2 inches above each jar. And I'm actually going to measure that with a tape measure to make sure I get it right. We really want to have enough water on top of them for this to work correctly. And there we go. It's going to take a little while since we're starting with cold water. This is really going to take a good, I'm going to guess, 45 minutes to come to a boil. We want to do this over a medium-low kind of a heat too. We don't want to do this too quickly or the jars will crack. You want to continue filling your canner with water until it reaches 2 inches, like I said, above the top of the jars. And we're just about there. And there we go. We're ready to move to the stove. Once you've muscled this big heavy canner over to the stove, you want to turn your flame or your burner on to medium low. We're going to heat this slowly. Keep in mind the sauerkraut, the liquid inside the jars themselves, and the water are all cold, so this is going to take a little bit of time. I said before, about 45 minutes. That's going to be a give or take. I'll tell you what, when this comes to a boil, I'll be back and I'll tell you how long it took me to get that to come up to the boil. Anyway, so here we go. We're going to put the lid on it and sit and wait. It's been 45 minutes now. I'll take the lid off. You can see the lid isn't too hot to handle at this point, but look in here. You've seen we've got some bubbles starting to rise from the bottom, and from inside the jars you can see they're starting to lose the air inside there. Things have little bubbles on them all over the place. Maybe I could zoom in on that for you. Yeah, see those little bubbles? Anyway, that's what we want. We're heating up here. It's been 45 minutes. We're just about at the point where we want to start counting. I want this to boil just a little bit more before we do that, and I'll show you what that looks like when we come back. Okay, and here we are at exactly 1 hour from when I started this. You can see it's now starting to bubble a little bit more. I'm going to turn the heat up and bring this up to a full boil, and then we're going to turn it back down to a simmer. I'll show you what that looks like as we get there. 10 minutes later, here's what we've got. You can see it's now starting to boil. This is really a pretty slow boil we've got going on, and I think this is fine. One other sign here that we're ready to start our timer is there's just a slight smell of sauerkraut around the stove here. Of course, the jars are releasing a little air from inside, and everything is the same temperature here. I'm going to start the timer for 30 minutes. I'm about 7 minutes into the process here, and I notice that I can hear it boiling. You can see it's really steamy, boiling away really well. I'm going to turn the heat down because we really don't need to have it on high heat for very long at all. Back down to medium. And we'll let it go for the rest of the time. I want to make sure that it continues to bubble the whole time that we're doing the canning process. So check it once in a while. Okay, it's been 30 minutes now, so it's time to turn off the heat and to get those jars out of there. I'll show you how I do that in just a second. Here we've got a standard canning jar grabber. You hold it at this end, grab the jars with that end right there, and I'm going to bring them out. I'm going to set them on this cutting board so they can cool. Now here I've removed all of the jars, and you can see that the water here is a little bit murky, and I'll tell you what, it really does smell like sauerkraut in here, and that's perfectly normal. Now look at my cans, my jars rather. My jars, they're completely full of sauerkraut. They haven't lost any liquid, at least not a significant amount, and if they've lost a little bit, it's not a problem. Now what we're going to do here, and this is the easiest part, we're just going to leave them sit here for about probably about 2 or 3 hours until they cool completely. And there you have it! Sauerkraut in a jar! Lovely canned sauerkraut. Some of these have already started pinging to let me know that they're completely sealed, and they'll be good once they get completely cooled off to go on the shelf in my pantry over here. Anyway, nothing more to it than that. Pretty easy, right? Listen, before you go, don't forget to like, share, comment, and especially subscribe to this YouTube channel. I really appreciate that. Thanks for watching today on Tim Talks Cooking. We'll catch you next time.